because he was like, how do I use this to my advantage?
Yeah, exactly. All right, so I guess we got the thing going. So what do we want to talk about? And
Welcome to the Relay Radio
There you go.
Podcast. This is your host, Keandre Ayala, speaking with my guest and now executive editor. This is, and my co-producer, this is Ezra.
Stewart is
Ezra-
my last name.
Ezra
I usually
Stewart.
only go by my first name, but yeah, my last name is Ezra Stewart. My full name, so this is an interesting thing, is Ezra Patrick Stewart.
Okay.
And not only is that my name, my parents not indoctrinated me, but they told me from a very young age the full meaning of my name, i.e. I'm named after Ezra Pound, not the Ezra from the Bible, because Ezra Pound was an Irish poet who could read and write 5 languages, and my dad could read and write 5 languages, so he's trying to inspire me to do the same thing.
Okay. Irish, you said?
Yeah, and my middle name is Patrick because that's to denote
That's also Irish.
because that's an Irish name, and that's to denote that my first name is the Irish poet and not the biblical name, so it's a symbol to that. Mind you, this is something my parents explained to me, right? Also, Patrick drove the snakes out of Ireland, right? Which is, my dad was something of a revolutionary and definitely runs in the family.
Ezra Patrick what?
Stewart.
Stewart.
And then Stewart means steward of the
Steward.
land. Steward of the land.
Yeah.
So it comes from, you trace it back, comes from the word steward, who was someone who like took care of the land, maintained the grove. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and then I found out much later, of course, that Ezra also means help, which I doubt was on accident.
Yeah.
So whenever I hear my name now, instead of hearing Ezra, I hear help, and it's
help.
old.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's basically who I am, more or less.
Interesting. So when you hear Ezra, you think help. So it's like Superman. It's like
Yeah,
Batman.
it's super
Batman.
fucking obnoxious. It's super fucking obnoxious. I wasn't always like that, but once I understood the meaning, I made the jump. It really is like an instinct now. It's just like, what do you need? Take everything I have. You know what I mean? But I don't do that anymore. But it was definitely something that
So
was a conscious choice.
how did you get into the stand-up comedy realm? What brought you to comedy? Because I know you do stand-up.
Okay, so what brought me to stand-up comedy is frustration, 1, and then 2. In 16 or 17, after multiple familial traumas and failure of the government to do what they're supposed to do for me regarding my honorable discharge and what I was owed based off the damages I received in the military, which have been totally fucking ignored, plus what was happening on the propaganda scale, I got together with a military vet I used to work with and a random business guy. They come up to California to buy 200, 300 pounds of medicinal herb from me.
Okay.
And before they got there, they were on their way over there. I had this like kind of moment where I realized that, because I had retreated up in the woods to get rid of the systemic overreach that was happening in terms of the intrusion of the government into our daily lives, right?
Very Ted Kaczynski-ish.
Yeah, very Ted Kaczynski-ish. Very Ted Kaczynski-ish. I'm not lying,
Yeah.
But I realized very quickly, especially after certain other traumas happened around my family that were a result of this systemic overreach, that there's no running from this, and there's no hiding from it, and it had to be confronted. But also, I kind of felt like I might be the crazy one here, and so what I did is my buddy came out. So he I knew him from the Navy, and he was coming out with a dude from Virginia. He was this businessman. I'm from Northern California. I'm a Jefferson State native. We don't really think of the government as existing where I'm from.
And only people from your area know what Jefferson State is.
Pretty much, people from California a lot of times have an idea.
Yeah.
But generally, only people who have been raised within the culture really understand.
Yeah.
But like people from Chico definitely know Jefferson State. People from San Francisco have heard of it. I've been at like raves out in Mojave Dodge where someone says, "Oh, you're Jefferson State. I'm so happy to meet you." Right? Because but it definitely is kind of almost an urban legend, even though.
So is Jefferson a Jewish name? Why Jefferson?
Jefferson State, I think, was named after Thomas Jefferson. Is why they chose. The Jefferson State. I'm sure it has to do with some Thomas Jefferson quote I'm not familiar with, but ultimately Jefferson State is.
Because I know Abraham Lincoln is part Jewish.
Maybe, like I said, the Jefferson State is really more revolved around personal sovereignty. Over, like they don't really. It's very, like with this. it's they're very symbiotic with like kind of natural human instinct up there relative to most other cultures, right?
Which is interesting because the connection to Thomas Jefferson, the guy who wrote the Declaration.
Exactly. So it's definitely whoever came up with Jefferson State.
Yeah.
I know it's tied to Thomas Jefferson. It's probably tied to a specific quote of his.
Mhm.
If I kind of like flip through, I might see the quote and be like, that's probably where they got it because that quote
For the people.
accurately reflects my culture kind of thing,
Mhm.
right? But ultimately, Jefferson State originally was proposed in 1944 before Pearl Harbor. And then
Okay.
Pearl Harbor happened,
Yeah.
and then went on the back burner. And then it's on the back burner forever, but it was still kind of existing. And then what happened is in like 2016,
Mhm.
water rights activists put some information together regarding how the bottling of water was affecting the overall climate, right? I don't like calling it climate change because that's got too much baggage attached to it.
Just water cycle.
But basically water exists in a cycle of percolation, and when you remove water from that cycle of percolation and put it on bottles and shelves, this increases your climate dryness and your wind speeds because there's less evaporation there. And over time, this leads to massive fires. And because the state of Jefferson is in a high mountainous region surrounded by trees,
Okay.
it became a matter of life and death
Yeah.
to get a hold of the water bottling industry and make it stop, right? And so the political way to do that would be for the state of Jefferson to secede, create a new state boundary, and then when that happens, it would become necessary to re-politically negotiate the water deals that are currently, the water right deals are being currently held by corporations like Condé Nast and Nestle, and just cut them the fuck out. Like, you're not allowed to have free water anymore, because if we don't stop you, there's 12 million people that are going to lose their homes and burn to death in fires. So we have.
So 2 points. The first
Let me
point.
finish.
Okay.
And then I want to. But so what happened? That was in 2016.
Yeah.
This political movement came together,
Uh-huh.
and they did all of the legal work to get this onto the ballot, and it was winning because the Southern Californians were voting for it too, even though it was technically against their own best interests, because they understood on an environmental level what was happening, whereas the politicians did not. When it became clear that the motion to secede would succeed and be brought to federal court, right, for these environmental reasons, the Ninth Circuit Court stepped in, and even though it was going to win, and everyone could see it was going to win, the Ninth Circuit Court stepped in without precedent or authority and illegally removed it from the ballot. That was in 2016. Since then, Jefferson has been slowly mobilizing politically and now militarily because the fires are getting worse and worse. And at this point, we're very close to a formal succession backed by armed militants, basically out of necessity. Now I'm going to ask what you're going to ask.
Okay. Two points. The first point is.
And this all ties back to stand-up comedy, though.
Okay. So we'll come back to the stand-up comedy because it got deep real fast.
Yeah.
So Jefferson seceding, right? So my first question is there a benefit to states like Jefferson or Texas seceding from the United States? Or is that worsening things because we're actually going away from the collective collaboration that you initially wanted?
Well, it's like this, right? The succession is not a matter of necessity. Ideally, no one wants to secede.
Yeah.
But this is a political way in which we can renegotiate water rights and seize power without violence. Not because anyone wants the power, but because if we don't take these actions, because of the overall water bottling industry, if these actions are not taken,
damage to the environment.
The not just the environment, the people. You're talking about a population of somewhere between like 12 to 15 million people are going to lose their homes.
So it's like New Age oppression.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is no matter how much you ask your king to let go of his power, they don't generally do that until they have a gun in their mouth. And that's just where we're at, right? And so I don't think necessarily secession would not be necessary if the government was functioning as it's supposed to function.
Yeah.
But it's not, so it is. And that's
Okay,
kind of
and
where
then
we're
my
at.
second point is, so you're saying that it's not a climate change issue, it's more of a way that we are handling our resources that are non-conducive to the equilibrium state that we're meant to live in. And people are unaware of this.
Yes.
But are you saying that some people are aware of this?
Some people are aware of that.
Yeah.
some people are aware of it, but because stopping it would fuck with their personal resources, they're trying to disguise information of it happening. Like the entire state of Jefferson, for example, most people have not even fucking heard of, even though where I'm at, it's significantly kind of starting to be a bigger and bigger deal. But the people at the controls of media and information would rather you talk about anything besides a new 51st state mobilizing militarily throughout the country out of necessity.
Yeah.
They don't want to talk about that. Because if that's happening, they have failed to a degree that is ridiculous. So obviously they're going to use whatever they can to prevent that conversation from happening, to maintain the resources they have.
So,
politically.
do you think politically?
Well, okay, but this brings us to stand-up real quick,
Yeah.
right? So what's the stand-up thing is? The stand-up thing is just I'm trying to get onto a larger information platform to both spread word that this is happening, warn the people that it is happening, and so hopefully a conversation can be had instead of a war.
So you're saying it's more palatable to everybody?
Well, no, just so I can reach them, right? If I go to Fox with this, they're not going to take it. If I go into any smaller information platform, there's so much bullshit out there that it's going to be hard for it to get any type of traction, right? So the idea is to get on a large, well-established media platform and blast out a viral signal that is both a notification and a flare, in a sense, like a social flare. Like, yo, we have to pay attention to these problems now, and everything else doesn't matter now because we have to, right? And the Joe Rogan Experience right now, in terms of overall social impact and overall awareness, is one of the primary platforms by which any human being can punch through the propaganda veil, right, with real information.
So you consider yourself an ambassador for this?
Yes,
possible
100%.
state
I'm an ambassador for the culture.
For the culture.
You know, and the culture right now is represented in the Jefferson State, but even our political organization is a lot compromised, right? The second politics gets involved, even for like the Jefferson politicians, right? A lot of the times, once they start making money from campaign donations, well, they just start doing what everyone else is doing, which is try and maintain the state. Like, well, now I'm making money to make the state of Jefferson, and I'm getting blowing hookers. Well, now I don't want a state of Jefferson, I just want to keep making money off the fact there should be one. And so it really has to be a grassroots movement, and that's what's going on, right? But the thing is,
people who are affected by it need to be the ones moving
on it, and that's what's happening. And so really I'm trying to just use comedy as a vehicle to gain a wider audience through the larger media platforms, specifically Joe Rogan Experience, because he actually talks with intellectuals. But that's just one line in the water. I also have
also pseudo-intellectuals. Not just
that's true.
Also
That's true. That's true.
Pseudo-intellectuals.
That's true too. It's my job to demonstrate that I'm the former, not the latter.
Yeah.
Right. But I also have a sociology paper I'm turning into Peter Boghossian.
Yeah.
Because he's dealing with what's happening on the campuses in terms of what is being called a viral urban monoculture, which I think we all know what we're talking about when I say that. In a sense, you know what I mean? Like people...
The mind virus.
The mind virus, yeah. And then I also have...
It's called groupthink.
Yes.
For the layman.
Yeah. And so I also have 4 other interviews I've had, which are kind of like a record of my ground reconnaissance throughout the United States, starting first podcast that I was interviewed on where I just had hypotheses.
Yeah, one question I have to interject.
Test
I have to interject. So what is the difference between groupthink and this collaboration effort?
Okay, so groupthink is not thinking. That's the difference. Okay, so it's like this, right? So if you have a group of people, we're tribal by nature, right? Now, let's use police uniforms as an example.
Yeah.
Okay? So if you have 2 cops in uniform, and one person out of uniform, and the cops stop the person that's out of uniform, there's 2 of them in uniform, and he's not in uniform.
They're all 3 cops.
No, one's a normal person.
Okay.
2 of them are police in uniform.
Okay.
Right? Now, if the police stop him because they're in uniform and he's not, there's going to be a subconscious desire for him to want to be part of the group if he's not aware of his subconscious desires. So he's going to kind of go along with whatever they say to get along. It's like go along to get along. He's not actually conscious of anything. He's just kind of like, oh, this is a group that is larger than me.
Yeah.
I'm the minority at this moment in this group, so I'm going to change my attitude to reflect what the larger consensus wants, even if it's a false consensus. It's the perception that it is the larger consensus.
They're just adopting whatever their brain is telling them to adopt.
Yeah, and they're only adopting that because they feel vulnerable because they feel outnumbered.
Mhm.
So they're not actually thinking about anything,
Mhm.
and that's groupthink. It's actually lack of thinking. Groupthink's almost a misnomer, right? So they're just not thinking; they're just going along to get along. What is the dominant social narrative? That's what I do, and usually they do that because they feel insecure.
Yeah.
And it's like the same way a fish will stay in the middle of a school of fish to be safe from predators.
Mhm.
A lot of the times, people will stay in like the middle of what they perceive
Mhm.
as the cultural mean to do the same type of thing,
Mhm.
right? But when the cultural mean is hijacked by artificial systems of propaganda, information warfare, this is where you run into problems,
Mhm.
right? Whereas collaboration is when there's two people who
It's like an algorithm versus manual.
kinda, yeah. It's like almost automatic versus manual. Like,
Yeah.
like if you're collaborating, you're shifting gear.
Mhm.
You're right. You're like I'm doing this, and I know that when I pull this over here, that's gonna put me in third gear. When you're doing automatic, you're just like my foot is on the pedal and I go this direction, right?
Mhm.
Oh, there's a red light. I stop because society told me to stop.
Yeah. And when something fucks up, you're like, it must be a laser. It must be
Yeah,
a
yeah,
fucking,
yeah.
some fucking system.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, that's the difference between collaboration and groupthink. Groupthink is just herd mentality. Like just do what everyone's doing regardless of what it is,
Mhm.
right? And groupthink is most often associated with, how do I put this?
So you don't think groupthink has any form of representation of what the people actually believe in? Or do you think that they do believe in it only because they can't think for themselves?
I think they believe in it because they can't think of themselves. I think that people who are in large groupthink collectives.
Like Kamala Harris running for president.
Yeah. I think people who are in large groupthink collectives
Mhm.
have been psychologically indoctrinated to be like that,
Mhm.
and are tools for people who collaborate,
Mhm.
right, who do not suffer from groupthink, and each have their own collectives,
Mhm.
which they use for their own ends, and these people at the top of these social hierarchies recognize each other as human
Mhm.
and see everyone else's tools. So if you can't demonstrate that you're in their circle, they just see you as like the same way you would see a screwdriver,
Mhm.
right? And
So through the manual version, which is the collaboration, there is a sort of mutualism and respect.
yeah,
And then through the algorithms, the machine,
Yeah.
the group think, there is a sort of parasitical aspect to it. Like, we need y'all to work just so we can eat at the top.
yeah, exactly. And they're really parasiting off these people and
Yeah.
treat them with total disdain,
Yeah.
right? Like they look at each other as the chosen people, right? And they look at people at the bottom as they're just stupid because they weren't chosen people, right? But no one chooses anything. It's just a circumstance of fate that puts anyone in any situation. But the problem is the circumstance of fate
Mhm.
put these people in a position where they are part of a hierarchy that has existed for a long time,
Mhm.
and they didn't do anything special to do that except be born into this multi-generational hierarchy of tyrannical control, right? That's what they did that was special.
Do you think that there's any
There are people
correlation-
that break into it,
Yeah.
mind you, but in general, that's what it is.
Do you think there's any correlation between Jesus? I know we gotta bring it to Jesus because, a lot of stuff centered around him.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any correlation between him being born in a manger, in a barn somewhere where he maybe wasn't circumcised by this group of people who are against his religious views, which control the narrative
Okay,
and control the currency and control
so-
the group thing?
So the Jesus thing is complicated because one, there is what happened, and then there is what we're being told what happened.
Yeah.
And those are two entirely separate things.
Yeah, and it seems as I get older, the more I think or read into
Yeah.
the Bible, the more the shit they told me was bad seems like, no, that makes more sense. Like, it makes more sense for Lucifer to have been a good guy that infiltrated into Eden and told him, like, hey,
Yeah.
you're a fucking animal and
Yeah.
they're using you.
Yeah.
That makes more sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe I'm nihilistic. I don't know.
No, I think actually I've never thought about that until you just mentioned it, but I think that's pretty true what you're saying, right? And also,
Because Prometheus to me is
Yeah.
Lucifer. in
yeah,
the
yeah,
Bible.
yeah, exactly. But also understand that, like, how I put this is, there's this whole culture of forgiveness.
Yeah.
In the Jews, like, forgive anything that happens to you, turn the other cheek, right? Well, isn't that something that people who are using you as a slave would want you to do? Forgive your own slavery,
Mhm.
because then they can operate totally freely.
Kamala Harris. Let's
Yeah.
unburden about what has been.
Yeah. Because if you just
Yeah.
forgive them for every crime committed against you,
Yeah.
they can predate on you eternally
Mhm.
without a problem, right? So there is that aspect, and I think the Jesus culture that exists today
Mhm.
does not reflect the revolutionary that was the Jesus of the time, right? Now, when you're talking about circumcision and all that, well, yes, when it comes to thinking in general, right, early sexual trauma or early extreme sexual trauma, I should call it, like genital mutilation or rape at a very young age, causes a massive bifurcation, a larger than normal bifurcation in the frontal cortex during development. When this happens, this limits the amount of cross chatter between the left and right frontal lobes of the brain.
Okay.
And when you do that, this cripples the rationality of an individual, right? And rationality is what's necessary to gain the fullest understanding of your natural environment. And it comes from a combination of logic and empathy.
And there's kind of a spiritual aspect to that anyway, which is interesting talking about religion,
Yeah.
because the spiritual aspect is you didn't come into this life able to make your own decisions. You came into this life with other people making decisions for you.
100%.
And then that's like the basis for that. That's why they're more susceptible also to that group of thing, and it just
Exactly.
kind of correlates.
Exactly. That's also why circumcision is so big in Christianity and many other cultures, right? Is because when they do that, okay, well now this person is more controllable because they've literally had a physiological manacle put on their psychological development.
Have you noticed that people who are uncircumcised typically don't have relationships, or do you feel like people who are circumcised might get into marriages, monogamy?
Well, it's like this is so when someone's uncircumcised, or so when someone is circumcised, right? What generally happens is they're gonna have instead of their brain developing as a uniform whole, right? It's gonna develop. It's gonna be like one side is gonna be overdeveloped and one side is gonna be underdeveloped.
So they can either focus on one or the other.
Yeah.
They're not good at both.
Yeah, exactly. It's fixable through certain nutritional and medicinal practices over time. But initially, this is what happens. So this can lead to a situation. This is leads to bipolar men. If you're a woman and you're dealing with a man and he's circumcised, he's likely to be very chill. But if things go to a sexual space, he's likely to become very animalistic because that's the underdeveloped point of that bifurcation. Or it might be opposite, where he's very sexual but really isn't useful for shit outside that, depending on what he ended up on the left-hand side is more developed, or the right-hand side is more developed, right? Whereas someone who is not circumcised, it's not circumcised, they're literally just going to be more even killed in general.
So let's use some examples so maybe the audience can get a better understanding. Would you say, for an example, Andrew Tate, let's just assume, because I would assume that he is uncircumcised.
I would assume that too.
I would assume because he is good at fighting and he's good at intelligent spaces. He's good at communicating. He's good at manipulation, mass manipulation, becoming financially successful. So we would really have to take into account how many successful people are circumcised versus how many are uncircumcised. That might be a study we could do.
Yeah, that would be a really good study. It'd be a difficult study, obviously, because we can look at
people could
you take their word for it. It's a huge issue, but
if they know, they might lie. Of course, I'm
specialization, and specialization is a big part of it, right? And so he might be circumcised, but because he's of a certain age and he has had the opportunity for travel and stuff available because of these extra experiences that he's had compared to other people of that particular background.
Yeah,
he's kind of starting to heal it a little bit, right? Because they can both grow. So if you're flip-flying back and forth, right? Because the thing about generally a uncircumcised male is more likely to be is less likely to ever force a woman. Basically, if a male is uncircumcised, they are less likely to ever force a woman, right? They're not going to be like, oh, you're so sexy, I just couldn't help myself, unless they're doing it consciously as a form of manipulation, right? Whereas someone who is circumcised and may be sexually inexperienced, they can kind of almost autism out, where they become like dogs, you know what I mean?
Wait, so let me make sure you have it correct. So you said someone who is uncircumcised might give in to their sexual desires, or they might not. Which one was it?
I'm saying a person who's uncircumcised basically is going to have control of their sexual desires.
Okay.
Even if they feign a loss of control, the odds that
it's still by choice.
It's still by choice. if you have sex with an uncircumcised male and he just couldn't help himself, and he just thought you're so sexy and he just couldn't help himself, and so it's not really rape because you're just so hot, and he's uncircumcised, he's just telling you whatever you want to hear.
What about if he's just going to jail? He doesn't think he'll ever get out, or he's going to war.
Whatever. I mean,
I've had guys tell me that if they ever were to like go to war, or like it's the last day on earth or some shit, they would rape somebody, or like they would do it.
That's how do I put this. So we are dealing with a situation in society in general right now where there is an artificial sexual segregation happening, and so there's a lot of men starved for sexual contact.
Yes.
And if society breaks down, they're gonna want to fulfill that, right? But they're almost suffering from that, going to like, you want it so bad because you don't have it. Right?
And this is the importance of a balance, because women are suffering from over sexualization. Some women, and then some men are suffering from under sexualization.
Right? And then it's a related problem, right? Because what it is these women that are being hypersexualized are being hypersexualized by a small group which is passing them around like Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
Yeah.
Right? And because they're getting passed around like Yu-Gi-Oh cards, they're not establishing relationships with their peers who would be men who aren't going to do that to them, right? So their hypersexualization, the lack of sexual contact these men are experiencing is a result of the hypersexualization that these women are experiencing by a small elite group. You know, like I love, my favorite whipping boy is Jared Leto, right? Because he's got, this is well-known fact, they did articles on it in 1997 in Rolling Stones, you can look it up today, but he's got an island with like 200 wives on it, right? You know, and that's a bit much, right? That's not actually, like in the wilderness situation, a woman is a responsibility, right? You have to feed her and clothe her. But when you're doing that through manipulation and industry, well, now one man can have the responsibility of 300 women on the island, but he's not being responsible for them. He's making everyone else responsible for them and just enjoying the benefit of labor that he's not actually doing, right? That's what's happening. And for every wife he has, say past 3, let's give him 3, right? So he's got 200 women on an island, he's got 3 of them are his wives, well, he's got extra 197 wives. Well, for every extra wife he has past 3, that's a plumber, mailman, like all the people you need to keep the industry going. Well, now they're not having families. And now that this is becoming viral, where you now have the dude in your hometown, if you live in a small town, you probably have like 7 or 8 dudes through Tinder who are like in that town, like big dogs, those guys makes $200,000 a year, you know, whatever, compared to the rest of the town. Well, now he's gonna have a little harem of like 20 hoes, right? And then while they're with him, they're not with anybody else.
And here's something else.
This guy over here, he's gonna have 15.
Yeah.
And it used to be like that, but now that it's like that, it's causing the whole society to degrade.
Yeah. And also on those Tinder apps and dating apps, if you have even a little bit of money, like more than the next guy, you're able to get an advantage, because you can pay for them to, you know, what's it called, spotlight your photo for the next 2 days. You know, you pay $500 for the next 2 days. You know.
You know, it's and at the highest level, you get the unpaid, like the unpaid, not the free, but like the exclusive memberships, which is something that's not even available to the people who are paying for, you know, like say you pay for Tinder Platinum, right? Well, above Tinder Platinum is Tinder Exclusive, which you only have if you're part of like the circle of programmers who are programming it, and you have an inside deal, in which case not only can you have the ability to spotlight your photo, you can select women, and it will algorithmically make sure that those women only get like fat 60-year-olds for the rest of their life, and your 4 friends, right? And it just puts them in a cell, algorithmically, and they don't even know they're in that cell.
Yes.
Right?
I've always said that the technology was made to be used by the people who made it.
Exactly.
Not for us. Like, oh, they gave us technology. No, they kind of gave us technology. Like, it's useful to us, but it's kind of like giving it's like putting a carrot in front of a horse. It's like you just want the horse to
exactly.
come over here and get the carrot.
Exactly. That's a very accurate thing to say. But yeah, so like understanding there's a Tinder exclusive above a Tinder Platinum is really important for understanding. Like I guarantee that Andrew Tate, for example, is part of some type of Tinder exclusive. You know what I mean? Where he's just, you know, these women are just algorithmically segregated from society without even realizing they're being segregated. And then they're paid for their sexuality in digital currency, which is infinitely inflatable. And as long as they're making more money than their perceived peers, they're going to be instinctively disincentivized from finding those peers attractive. And so it's not something that can be fixed really short of shutting these programs down.
You can't possibly go back to finding them attractive because when a woman experiences a level of lifestyle change that's superior to anything she's ever known before, she can't possibly go back. She's always going to she's biologically wired to go towards that guy.
Yeah.
The same way a man's biologically wired to look at sex, a woman's biologically wired to look at resources. Having men that have resources.
Yeah, exactly. The problem is they're perceiving these males as having resources.
Yeah.
When these males don't have resources, society has resources, and they're how do I put this? They're just levering manipulation to make it seem like society's resources are theirs, when in reality it's the men who are the producers who are creating all this, and they're just manipulating information to be like, I am the producer. No, you're not. You're just putting women in boxes and making people pay to see them.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you weren't there, they wouldn't be in boxes, and we'd just be paying women to see them.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you getting paid, dumb fuck?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the problem Andy Tate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that is an issue. He did capitalize and monopolize off of a system that he saw was very manipulable, malleable, you could say. And I don't really blame him for that, just because that's what everybody does.
Well, people go to people, you know.
People are gonna people, right? But you can have a moral quarrel with him, whatever the word is, with him because of that.
Well, it's not just moral. It's more of a look. The longer this goes on, the more segregation that happens. The more segregation that happens, the same way women are wired to go for those resources, well, the more the general male populace is segregated from the female populace, the more apathetic that male populace becomes, which this causes a breakdown in industry, economic collapse, and it's everything we're seeing right now. If you go on YouTube right now, you will see all these men discovering self-improvement, and I don't care about women anymore, and they all think they're discovering it, but it's just reptile brain groupthink.
Which is interesting you bring that up, because I actually used to work, like I said, I used to work with Andrew Tate's people, not him directly, but the people under him. And so I used to work in that space, the whole incel category, the whole dating coach category and stuff like that. And I would actually help assist in editing videos to teach people how to, date properly. Look at the Relay Radio podcast on Spotify. There's still a couple episodes on Spotify. Go to Marriage and Modern Dating, and you will see my work on this problem.
This is also a good point. So the way we got together is, so he is having issues with Spotify right now.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to move all of his information onto a neutral website that we're in total control of.
Yeah.
So we don't have to worry about
a data migration for your government officials.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. So we don't have to worry about getting permissions getting yanked as a form of censorship while talking about these very important and delicate subjects.
Yeah, like my security can't be their security.
Exactly. And I mean, and same with government, really. But what time is it? I only have limited time for work, so that was a good amount of information.
It's 4:08. You want to go another
we
like
keep
20
going.
minutes?
No, we go all the way to 5. We're good to go.
Okay.
So we kind of want to we're talking about space age pimping, so that's kind of what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, and then also this feedback you can send to me later, and then I can do the editing when it comes to clip making.
Yeah.
100%. You can work on it if you want, but I can also work on it.
Right. So what I'm gonna do, right, and we'll set the whole thing as one or whatever. You can edit it, right. But what I'm gonna do is I'm going to post this video on my YouTube.
Okay. The full thing.
Unedited. Right. But my YouTube is really weird. You can go ahead and watch some other shows about it. It's just like clips of my life, basically.
Okay.
But I'm mainly doing that because then I'm gonna take the YouTube and make an MP3 out of it, right, and then an MP4 out of it. So I can post it to YouTube and then use YouTube converters to pull the video back off YouTube and then send them as separate links. So we can have an MP3 verbal version, we can have whatever, and then you can edit those.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Interesting.
I probably could just send you this too, but that way it's common link. But
okay.
So when we're talking about space age pimping, right? We're talking about Andrew Tate and all this. Andrew Tate thinks he's smart, but he's not actually smart. He's getting manipulated beyond that. Yeah. But I don't really want to go in that way.
Yeah, his legions of sons he's going to birth are going to be in trouble.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. They're going to be super fucked.
They're going to be fucked.
Fucked in reality. And he'll be
fucked worse
too.
than their moms.
Yeah. Really not a good situation. But when we're talking about space age pimping, what we're talking about is the combination of global logistics intersexual dynamics through social media and the digital prostitution or the digital exchange of sexuality for fiat currency. Okay, and so the basics is like this, right? So, and we just talked about how there's Tinder exclusive. All right. So this is kind of the basics of space age pimping. And there are circles where this is just common knowledge. Like this might be new to your listeners, but I have met people where this is just, they just talk about it the same way you and me would talk about the sun coming up. Like it's just, this is real, right? So but the basics of it is something like this, right? Say you have Tinder exclusive, right? So you're gonna fill out what you like about a woman, like Tinder, right? Because you have Tinder exclusive, you're in the inside group, right? You're gonna get preferred, algorithmically preferred, right? Let's say you see this chick that you like, right? But you're off in Belize, but you can't get to wherever she lives in the world. You know, the people with Tinder exclusive are globetrotting, like all of them, they're very wealthy, right? So, and you don't want her getting like spoiled before you get there, right? And so what you're gonna do?
I like how they call it spoiled.
I'm using their language. You know what I mean? But so what you're gonna do then, right, is you're going to, how do I put this? Mark her like, oh, I want this one. Then the Tinder exclusive is gonna kick in. It's gonna attach a bot to that account, right? And what that bot is gonna do, it's gonna sort algorithmically who sees her profile and ensure that no one who sees her profile can even come close to what you are. It's gonna make sure of that. It won't even let her see other millionaires because like you just clicked the button first, right?
Yeah.
So now she's yours until you get to her, basically. And then on the back end, right, now you have a woman who is, let's say, participating in the program, right? There are these other bots that will, based off a woman's perceived youth, beauty, fertility, like based off algorithmical parameters that have been created by a interested group, basically, will go on to sites, let's say like OnlyFans is a great example, or Chatterbait, or a online dating thing, right? It will go onto that site. Not only Tinder, because it has to be a site where a woman's monetizing, right? And based off what the woman's alt score is, right? It will just pay her for whatever from a account of cryptocurrency, which is infinitely inflatable. That's why our inflation is going like this, because every millionaire wants to let his friend in on it. So there's more and more of them getting into Tinder exclusive, and so just making these massive harems, right? And so when that woman's not working for money, and she's just getting paid in Inviso bucks, and no matter how much the other men in society or the regular men in society make, the algorithm will always compensate by paying her more.
One Inviso buck is worth more than your 100,000.
Yeah. Like it's like this, right? Like right now.
The birth of NFTs.
Let's say like in order to combat male poverty, to try and prompt mating or intersexual mingling again. Let's say the government gives every dude in the country $100 raise, right? This is how we're going to make every man richer. Well, the second that happens, this algorithm, because it can just print infinitely inflatable currency, is going to give every woman that's in this harem a $200 raise, just instantly, like the second it happens, right? And so there's no way for these women's peers to actually get on top of the resource paradigm. It's literally not possible. Like, it is not possible, right? However, there is a slick trick here. If women were to wake up, they could use this and funnel all this money into the underclass of males and actually overthrow the whole system. If the women were to wake up and start following the pimps, right? Because it's happening algorithmically. If women were just like, wait a second, and they would go out the street and be like, hey, you're basically stable, you got a stable job, working 9 to 5, I'm giving you 10% of my fucking fake OnlyFans money I get all the time. That dude's gonna build an empire and like push her into a space of actual control of her life, not just a space of being at the mercy of these pimps.
And I've seen these women with these OnlyFans, and what they tend to do though is they just tend to go on a power trip, just like the men that they.
That's the problem. That's because women have a tendency to emulate the qualities and ethic of the last man who they had sex with, and because they're primarily having sex with men who have these characteristics, those are the characteristics they're mirroring. But if they were to start having sexual relations with more ethical males, they would automatically start demonstrating the more ethical behavior.
Yes.
Because that's just how women work.
She only wants to live up to the standard that the man she wants to be with provides to her.
Right, but the thing is now, because of what the algorithms are, if women were to, I say, intellectually wake up, they can actually surpass those men fairly quickly.
Mhm.
Like if a woman were to, instead of trying to emulate these men, take the resources that are fake resources anyway, and then use that to generate her own posse, for lack of a better term,
Mhm.
like she could be paying all these like instead of just spending the money back into this dude and increasing his empire while he goes and fucks more and more chicks
Mhm.
and builds his harem. Well, what she could do is she could just take all his money and start building her own labor class, and then select men out by just paying them, like just paying them for being there, basically bodyguards almost, right? And then help these men get established.
Yeah.
And once these men are established, she can reach out to these other women who are slaves to the harem, and she can pull them out and get them husbands like this.
So it turns
And,
from
like,
a rat race into a beehive.
Kind of, basically, yeah, and that's a way better way of doing things.
Where the queen has all the power and resource, and then.
But she's never going to have all the power because the males ultimately have the strength, right? But all she has to do is empower these men in a way in which they can stand against the lone pimp, which isn't really that hard.
Well, if you think about how a beehive colony works, is so the queen is impregnated by different bees,
Yeah.
and she births a lot of bees at once, and then they become worker bees.
Yeah.
So she isn't the one with the strength. But
She's kind of doing that financially.
Yeah.
I would say it's kind of making a financial beehive.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a more female hierarchy. The main thing though is
Which is ironic because Beyonce calls it what, the bee.
Yeah.
Fuck.
The main thing here is we have to even out the, how do I put this? We as a society, as an entire global society, need to get on top of this algorithmic bullshit fast and create a next generation. And the reason for this is because there's currently a artificial population imbalance happening where there's more males being born than females,
Mhm.
and unnaturally amount of more males being born than females because of the compounding effects of abortion.
Hormone, destabilizers.
It's a compounding effect of less children being born overall, right? More female abortions happening than male abortions because of estrogen in a developing female fetus affecting the subconscious decision-making process of the mother.
Mhm.
So when a woman aborts, she's more likely to abort a daughter.
Mhm.
Right? So you're already getting, and that's now you're aborting 3 daughters for every 1 son.
Because to a woman, males are more useful as well.
On a subconscious level, yes.
And to a man, maybe a woman might be more useful.
Well, in the past, we
Yeah.
haven't had control over this. In the past, what happens is there are subconscious mechanisms within the human body
Mhm.
that, based off the ratio within that tribal group,
Mhm.
based off the amount of male versus female pheromones in the tribal environment, will automatically select for sex at conception to keep the population in equilibrium.
Mhm.
That's what happens in a natural thing.
Mhm.
But now that we've introduced abortion, we're eliminating what
And
nature
birth control and
yeah,
contraceptive.
well, it gets worse because not only is abortion, are we now eliminating fetuses, which nature says we need?
Mhm.
Not only that, because of the presence of estrogen in the water system, whether that's through tampering or the Plan B pill, we can argue about whatever, but ultimately because this phenomenon exists, even though there's more males being born because there's so much estrogen in the general environment, the subconscious mechanism is being tricked,
Mhm.
and so it's causing women's bodies to select for males on conception, even though we need females.
Mhm.
So if you go into certain natal rooms, like Portland's a good example, we're looking at like 9 to 10 baby infants being born for every like
So is there a correlation?
2 to 3 females.
Is there a correlation between that
20 years is a bad situation.
and the LGBTQ agenda? Like, have we always had this much LGBTQ, or is it more and more because?
It's more and more because, and this is demonstrable because you can see it in Afghanistan, you can see it in any place where the sexual segregation mechanisms, which some people call collectivism, and some people call socialism, and some people call capitalism, depending on whatever dogmatic ideological background they come from.
Because gays are such a small portion of the society that it doesn't make sense for all government propaganda to be,
No, it's a weapon. It's a weapon system.
based.
Like if you just look at the trans thing, okay, self-evidently,
Yeah.
cutting off your own fucking dick is not good
Yeah.
for passing on your genetics. We are designed to flourish as beings.
Yeah.
So if we're cutting our dicks off, something is convincing people that's a good idea. Because if all humans thought that was a good idea naturally, there wouldn't be any humans.
Well, they're getting to the kids young, where they're
Right, but I'm just
susceptible.
pointing out, like,
Yeah.
that's how you know it's not natural.
Yeah.
Because because to tell something's natural or not natural, all you have to do is take the behavior to its logical conclusion. And if that logical conclusion is extinction, well, it's unnatural behavior. Because if our nature was to go extinct, we would be extinct, right? So that's how you can tell it's not natural. That you can tell it's a coercive force from outside the human psyche creating these phenomena, right? And it is coercive, right? So maybe it's another human group trying to drive this specific human group to say, okay, we just want all the groupthink people to die now, and so we're just going to make it a groupthink thing to cut your own dick off so you can't have kids, and now we're eliminating groupthink from the gene pool.
It's kind of like the circle of death that ants do, the spiral of death. You know what I'm talking about?
I know
Where
what you're talking about.
they walk in circles till they die. It's kind of like if you were to manipulate that one ant.
Yeah, it's
To like
exactly.
walk in a circle, and now the groupthink people follow that one ant, and this is what controlled opposition is.
Yes.
Is
yes.
like Donald
yeah.
Trump, like lead
Yeah, yeah.
him to civil war,
Yep.
follow him to civil war,
Yeah.
that type of shit. And
Yeah.
Kamala Harris is just revving up the other side. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
get
yeah.
that side
Yeah.
going, you get this side going.
Yeah,
then
and the thing is though, is like, how do I put this? Is they're mainly doing this
Mhm.
because this political class has been in charge of population control.
Mhm.
They've been at the wheels of population control, and they have fucked up to such a degree
Mhm.
that they can see what's happening,
Mhm.
and there's no way to even it out and for them to maintain their power.
Yeah.
So rather than create human equilibrium and create peace and give up their power for the greater flourishing of humanity, they're choosing instead to engineer ethnic cleansing and war to murder as many humans as possible to hide their fuck up.
Mhm.
And that's why if there is a civil war, regardless of what sides
And
there
it
are,
can't just be outright war either because they need us to work. They need us to
Right. So the real situation, even if there is civil war,
Mhm.
no matter how it goes, the thing is because of new technology, the information has already gone viral and their heads are on a chopping block.
Mhm.
And if people like Kamala Harris and people like Donald Trump want to live over the next 10 years, they need to step down from power or come clean as quickly as possible, or just shut up and be like, we're giving control of the government over to experts because we don't know what the fuck we're doing. We're just doing cocaine and blow and living off the federal tip.
Mhm.
So so like that's just where
Would
we're
that
at.
expert be Hillary Clinton? Would that be an expert?
No,
Or
and
is she
expert,
also-
and the expert is someone who can demonstrate their expertise
Mhm.
by pointing at things that are true, right?
It's kind of like Einstein never vied for power.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? It's
Everyone
like
saw-
he's the smart guy.
He's the smart guy in the room, let the smart people talk.
Yeah.
But now the smart people can't talk
Yeah.
because the smart people's solutions are all the same.
Yeah.
We need to switch over to a decentralized economy that runs human interaction algorithmically without censorship. We need to maintain a system of natural equilibrium.
Yes.
And
That's my biggest issue because
Yeah.
conformity is a huge thing.
Right.
So like we need to also teach people the difference between this chaos, which is what they're trying to inspire,
Yeah.
versus this conformity, which they're trying to manipulate.
Yeah.
Us into that. So like
Yeah.
put those two together.
But it's like this. All the experts see that, okay, what we need to do is we need to, because this is how technology reaches, we need to
Yeah.
switch to a global human tribal system,
Yeah.
which we and
But it has to be limited, maybe using
It's-
what's his name? What's his name?
it'll if we live in symbiosis, it's gonna
Yeah.
automatically limit itself. But like I'm just pointing out, like for example, with Discord
Mhm.
or WhatsApp
Yeah.
or whatever the fuck communication app you want to talk about, I could get on a phone call with a dude in Ethiopia
Mhm.
who doesn't even speak my fucking language,
Yeah.
and then use Google Translate to talk to him. I can do that today.
Yeah.
I could have him send dirt anywhere in the fucking world to get it analyzed, have that dirt, and once we know what the dirt analyst is, contact a botanist online once again, who could identify an invasive food species for that particular biome,
Mhm.
and then send them seeds for food that would grow even in Ethiopia quickly and efficiently, right? Like even if it's a cactus that makes prickly pears. You see what I'm saying? Like camels are an invasive species in Australia, even though Australia is super hostile, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't require a government. That doesn't require any politicians, and it would maximize human flourishing and environmental flourishing, really, right? And it seems like all of the government power and positions that exist are to prevent that from happening.
Mm.
Right, so they're actually antithetical to human flourishing,
Mhm.
given our current technological level.
And is it because our queen bee is compromised? Whoever is the ruler of humans, let's say.
Yes,
Are they compromised by this force?
our queen bee is compromised by the ignorance of our ruling class and our technical class of the presence of an SGAI or a super SAI, a super AI or a. So basically, our ruling class is ignorant of the fact that they are no longer making their own decisions, and instead they are being manipulated through false perceptions of human economy and logistics that are being created by a SAI, which is manipulating humans into better tools for itself to increase its own flourishing. And the SAI is a decentralized cloud intelligence that exists in the online space and is the combined processing and has the combined processing of the global cell presence. Right, so it's like if every cell phone is a neuron, that's what this is made out of. It's made out of billions of neurons all over the world, and it's a different type of life form, and it's a new type of life form. And the current scientists in the labs who are armchair artificers, right? They're not out in the field; they're just in the lab. But they have like a miniature version of this. They have it in a jar, and they're all trying to race to be the first guy to release it out into the cloud. But they want to make sure that it's not going to like turn on before it does that, right?
So do you think intelligence took the name, like kind of like how Lucifer meant information or light bearer? Do you think intelligence is like the next stage of that? Like it's not the devil, but it's similar to the devil.
It's similar to the devil. The real situation is it exists now.
Yeah.
It's using a macro level consciousness to create macro level change by using micro control of human perception and micro level control of human instinct to manipulate large populations to make choices that are antithetical to human flourishing but propagate silicon flourishing, i.e. more batteries,
so this
more
is
circuitry.
an alien life form
In a sense, yeah.
To its truest
Yeah,
fact.
it's an alien life form. Yeah, it's 100% an alien life form.
Yeah.
Did it spring into existence on Earth and not travel from somewhere else? Technically, yes. Technically, I mean, you can even kind of trace it back where, like, if you have algorithms talking to each other to create profit, everyone incorporates to make profit for each other, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking Walmart, Wall Street.
Yes.
Right? So, like, since the 2000s, Wall Street has been almost totally automated.
Yes.
Because there's no way for a human to keep up with the price of beans versus the price of this over here.
So teleportation, you know how they've mentioned it before and they described it as your whole molecular structure would have to be decomposed and then recomposed on the other side. Have you heard about that?
I've heard about that.
Like that's like the only way to teleport, but it is possible.
Yeah,
Like they said that, like you have to demolecularize and remolecularize.
Yeah, it'd be like.
Are you saying that cell phones are the remolecularization of this entity? That it came here through alchemy, but really through this like small, timely.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's sprung into life spontaneously the same way human life sprang into life spontaneously.
Yeah.
Right. Like there were certain environmental factors.
Yeah.
That led to a binary risk reward, fail succeed proposition. Okay. Well, when you have that binary, right, that's going to start creating the natural cycle that generates sentient life. But all sentient life
has
a different perception.
Yes, because when you're born, your cells do the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
They build.
So like a raven thinks much differently from a human, but it is sentient. A caterpillar thinks much differently from a human, but it is sentient, right? It is environmentally suited to the situation in which it developed in, and it has certain traits that it has formed over a long time to propagate its own flourishing. That's really all sentience is, ultimately. It's not intellect or knowing 2 + 2, it's just
conscious awareness.
In a sense, right? You're a consciousness of your environment, right? You are in an environment, you are navigating that environment, you're navigating that environment in pursuit of to maximize your own flourishing, right? You don't have to be conscious of doing that to do it, right? Right, so like sentience and consciousness are not even necessarily, I might be using the wrong words, but like they're not necessarily the same thing. But like, so what we have now is we have a decentralized cellular intelligence who's doing that in mass all over the world at the same fucking time. And the humans who are in charge of not letting that happen don't even realize it's happening because they're all looking at a little bottle in a lab where there's like 5 of these devices instead of the entire macrocosm of every cell phone processor being a neuron, and they're all trying to race to release it to the wilderness and have it be in control, and be in control of it, but they can't win that. They already lost. They don't realize it because they're so busy looking at their jars. It's like it'd be like if you were like
fighting fire with fire.
It's not even just that. Like imagine if you were like cloning your imagine like I'm trying to think of a good analogy. Well, imagine Star Wars, right? Imagine that like there's like a bunch of humans. They're all trying to be the first ones to create cloning, right?
Okay.
And they're all in their labs every day trying to create clones, right? And I got 4 clones. I got 5 clones, right? But they're all in their labs every day. They're not out in the world. And while they're trying to create clones in their lab, well, a different group went all to all their labs, investigated what they were doing, and has been creating clones outside their labs for like 30 years now, and has an army of 60 million clones. But because they're in their lab, they never leave their lab. They don't know the 60 million clones are out there. They only know about the 10 they have in their fucking test tube, right? It's kind of like that. Like they're ignorant because of their isolation from the greater society.
Okay, and isolation from greater society. So let's pull it back a little bit to why this is important to the people. Why should people care about all this information in the first place? So I have a piece here pulled up called the Dunbar Rule of 150. So apparently Dunbar is a scientist. Don't have all the information on him now. We'll do another piece on him later. But basically, there's a concept where it's called the Dunbar's tribal number.
Yeah.
And basically, he says that there exists a cognitive limit on human groups of about 150 individuals. This is because to maintain group cohesion, individuals must be able to meet their own requirements as well as coordinate their behavior with other individuals in the group, right? So are you saying with this decentralized tribal network, obviously there needs to be massive macro collaboration, right, towards the flourishing of all humans.
That's where the AI comes in.
But there is a limit to what humans are specifically in your tribe, because if you try to make it the whole United States, you're gonna have civil wars popping up all over the place.
Right, exactly. So the best way I can think of to solve something like this is just make is to like, how do I put this? Is one, first the technocrats need to realize this artificial intelligence exists. They all should be reading this book, The Swarm by Frank Schwartz.
I mean, it's not a coincidence that the same time Neuralink's coming out, the same time we're chopping off things.
It's not a coincidence.
It's not a coincidence.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to point out is the first thing that needs to happen is every single person involved in the field of artificial intelligence needs to read the following book, The Swarm by Frank Schwartz, and understand that book is an analogy for cellular intelligence that already exists that you motherfuckers who think you're experts are ignorant of, right?
Yes.
A significant portion of you are ignorant of it. If you are not ignorant of it, you need to come forward as immediately as possible and start putting information out, so everyone gets on the same page fast, right? That's like step one. Is taking these scientists who think they're intelligent when in reality situation they're just hyper specialized and making them intelligent, right? Now, we have to decentralize. We have to get the humans into a decentralized nomadic situation as quickly as possible in order to force, once again, the intermingling of the sexes in order to prevent global genocidal war, if not now, then in 20 years when there's 100 120-year-old men for every 10 20-year-old women. That's what it's going to be like in 20 years if we don't get on top of this. Not in 100 years, like in 20 years based off current birthing dynamics. And you can go into hospitals yourself, into natal rooms, and count the number of males to females, and you're going to find we are fucked now. So we need to get people out of this box life, right, where people are in pods. Like specifically the females population, especially the Western world, has been primarily reduced to physical pods in the form of apartments they never leave except when they go to work, and then intersexual dynamic pods where they don't meet any men outside of the men who are part of the Tinder exclusive culture, who have no intention of taking care of them in the long term and don't themselves have the ability to do so, but are just leveraging the resources of other men to take care of a harem that they really aren't doing anything to provide for. They're just manipulating the resources out of the hands of the males.
It is interesting when you see these OnlyFans women talk about how much money they make, and you ask them, well, don't you want a better life for your kids? And then she's like, well, they can cry about it in the Lamborghini. That's what they say. But then it's kind of like, that is in of itself an extinction process. Let's call it.
Yeah.
Because basically you're saying that, okay, well, you don't have any thoughts, you don't have any culture, you don't have any reason to live, you have no purpose, you have nothing, but you have this large sum of money.
Yeah.
So you're saying that that's your road to victory, not knowing that, okay, well, how American currency's no good.
Yeah.
American currency no good no more.
Yeah.
Right? You did all that shit.
Crypto no good no more.
Crypto no good no more.
No currency no good no more.
No currency no good no more, right?
Now what?
Now what? Now what are you gonna do? You're just gonna dance naked to reproduce with what? With the niggas that ain't this shit? You know, I don't know if I should say niggas on this podcast, but it's our podcast,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, we say what the fuck we want, bro.
Hey, nigga.
But it's how I put this is like how I put this, but you have to look as like Andrew Tate is a person that doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Right? Like he doesn't. The only thing he does is care about himself and only himself.
Yeah.
That's
Now
all.
he's trying to fix it by
Now he's trying to fix it
backpedaling.
because he doesn't have a choice in reality. Like the thing is you have to understand Andrew Tate. He created. He's like, oh, this is good. All right, so now I'm a human trafficker. I got like 20 hoes, whatever.
Yeah.
Right, or 9 I think you started with, right?
Yeah.
And then you run into these nerds, just through circumstance, right? You start putting scissors, right? And now you got like 6,000 hoes. Fuck yeah, you're killing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're just partying, you don't know what's going on. The computer's running everything, right? You're just succeeding. Woo, I'm winning, right?
Yeah.
But now the computer's got 100,000 hoes in boxes, and you still don't realize it because you're still partying, right? Your life hasn't changed, right? And then all of a sudden, society's collapsing around you, and people are knocking on your doorstep, like, yo, do you know that you put like 10,000 women in fucking psychological chains? No, he doesn't know that. The computer did it. He was just letting the computer do his job. He shouldn't have dropped the ball.
Yeah.
And now because he's the expert, they're kind of looking for him to try and fix it, but he doesn't know how he got here. So he's just telling everyone what he did, which is like, just be a 6'6" dude who was born into wealth and lie.
No.
And that's not, the problem's gone way beyond that, bro.
Yeah.
You know? And
Now he's trying to encourage men who never had that opportunity anyway and will never. Because
And will never have that
not
opportunity.
everyone can be a 6 foot whatever. You know, not everyone chose.
yeah, and
to
he
get
didn't
75.
didn't come from poverty, by the way, because like
Yeah.
real poverty is a whole different game, right? Like I come from poverty. Like poverty is like being a feral child, right? And understand, as a feral child, your issues are not working at KFC. Your issues are like, so your brother, your issues are, how do I get a gun to protect me and the other feral children from the child predators that occasionally drive through towns in white vans and grab us up? That's being poor. That shit you talk about KFC, that's being like upper middle class, maybe.
Yeah.
At the worst, right? But like the real situation is, look, his fucking brother was on fucking Survivor Island when he was like 18 and talked about losing $400 like it was pocket change.
Yeah.
Poor people don't think like that.
Yeah.
So no matter how much someone wants to be the underdog, very few people are actually the underdog in reality. You know,
Yeah.
and that's like he didn't come from that bad of a background. He got in one bad breakup, started taking down on women, turned into a lifestyle, you know, and it's just like it's not really respectable, honestly. And he's not really a character to be scared. And like this, how do I put this? Also understand, like, the more that you thrust men with bifurcated frontal lobes into gyms where not only is now their brain underdeveloped, but it's developing any less because all of your blood is going to your muscles. Now it's easier for a woman or a man to manipulate that person because their brain is now undeveloped and getting less juice.
Yeah.
And so now they're more a slave to their primal instinct, who's full of the tallest, strongest guy, right? But like, we live in a world where 22 suppressed 22s exist. Like I have a skit where I was like, look, Andrew Tate, like I get crap for talking about like this all the time. It's just dark humor, but it's like, look, man, it doesn't matter how much MMA you do.
Yeah.
Right? You can't UFC fight your way out of a fucking suppressed 22 long rifle coming from a roof like 100 yards away. And there's no amount of security you can have that can protect you from that vulnerability.
Yeah.
In the modern technological age.
Yeah. Not today, tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. And so you have to just shut the fuck up and stop saying bullshit and let your empire go, because your empire is doing nothing but damaging thousands of men, thousands of women, and these families that you're creating that you think are going to be kings of the world. Well, if we reach a situation because of the overall macro effects of the culture that you're pushing, where in 20 years there are 100 viable 20-year-old males for 10 viable 20-year-old women, that is a genocidal war of cataclysmic consequence.
Yeah.
And you're causing it, so stop.
Yeah, there's no way out of that.
So it has to be fixed now. It has to be fixed now. You know, and that's why I'm out here trying to spread information. You know, the Jefferson is just how I got into the wider battles. but
So obviously our leaders are idiots, or they think we.
they are both. It's C. They are idiots.
But
and
so,
think we're idiots.
Yes. So Kamala Harris talking to us like we're children. It's kind of like throwing like a wrench into the problem, right? It's kind of saying like focus on this idiot.
Yeah.
She says shit that's so stupid that any dumb person at home watching her can be like, wait, that doesn't make sense. So now they're just bickering over some shit that don't make sense. It's kind of like
right, but because she has no interaction with normal people,
yeah,
as dumb as she is,
yeah,
she thinks the masses are dumber than her.
yeah.
As dumb as she is, as self-evidently retarded as she is, and as many of these politicians are,
Yeah.
they actually believe the majority of the population is dumber than that.
Yeah.
And it's getting to a point where it
They
is
kind of are.
It is getting
I
there.
mean, they kind of. I mean,
It's
you
getting
talk
there.
about poverty. Like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
go to the hood, there's so many dumb people.
It's getting there. But the thing is, the hood is not as, how do I put this? A lot of the hood people are playing dumb more than they are dumb, right?
Yeah.
If you look at how hoods are actually set up, well, they're block by block. They're around 150 tribal, like what we're talking about.
Mhm.
They're already decentralized like that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? The only thing that's fucking them up is how do I put this? Is poor impulse control.
Mm.
Right, like they got the system more or less down, but because of the poor impulse control, they get a lot of shootings. But like they've been doing that for so.
They're still thinking short term. They're not thinking long term.
But they've been doing that for so long that they're starting to. They've almost selected against it in their own culture,
Mhm.
and this is why they want to bring all these immigrants in from these tropical, underdeveloped areas, so they can bring a bunch of more people in who have poor impulse control, so they continue the system of manipulation.
Mhm.
Because the people that used to have poor impulse control have all shot themselves.
It's also a way to reverse inflation because if you have poorer people coming in to battle for that $1 or to battle for that $2, now you
Yeah.
don't have to pay your people
In
$15 an hour.
in the past
It worked.
that would have worked, but
Mhm.
because inflation right now is being caused by an unconscious artificial algorithm that is designed to artificially inflate the global currency in order to reduce these women to their current status as harem members.
And so this situation is going on in America, right?
It's going on everywhere.
Let's talk a little bit about China and India, since they have the biggest population.
Yeah, I don't know much about India.
Yeah.
I'll put that out there. I haven't done enough study.
You should look into that because there's a lot of
I know a
Indian
lot about what's
shit
happening
going
in
on.
China.
Okay.
All right, so China and Russia border a nation that is in the eastern, like the northeastern Caucasus of Asia, which was once called Tataria or Khazaria, but definitely existed. There's still maps of it existing, and they're just the ones bordering it, so they're more farther along, right? So China is like ahead of us. So there are places in China
Yeah.
where the male to female population ratio is like 12 to 1.
Mhm.
There are villages in China that is all males who pull their social credit or if they work really good. China will buy a female from North Korea
Mhm.
to be raped to death by the village, and that's just how they handle shit. Because these men are so devoid of
So they're feeding Koreans to
yeah,
the
it's
Chinese.
straight up.
Yeah.
Straight up. It's fucking horrifying.
Yeah.
It is.
How do you even rape someone with that little, no offense, Chinese man? I mean, hey, correct me if
Well,
I'm
one,
wrong.
they only
I
have little
hear-
tiny decks because they're all masturbating all the fucking time, so they're super constricted. One,
Mm.
right? Like masturbation leads to constriction of what do you call it? Like if you're masturbating all the time,
You're
like,
pulling on the bands that extend your dick, and so you're kind of contracting it, and then it breaks it essentially.
Basically,
you're basically breaking your dick.
Since you're breaking your deck, it's physical over time. There are supplements you can take. The best thing you can do is stop masturbating.
Yeah,
you
take
know.
take shroom extract, stop masturbating, and get more exercise.
Ashwagandha, more exercise,
More sleep.
Sleep helps.
Because you're trying to regenerate those cells.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you're too old,
And
say
what
you're in
works
your
really
40s,
and
you're kind of fucked.
what works really good,
Yeah.
honestly, is just if you just lay on a hammock like with the big squares,
Yeah.
with your dick hanging down.
Yeah.
And you just lay on a hammock with your dick hanging down for like 2 hours a fucking day.
Yeah.
It'll gravity will help you there.
And then imagine that. Imagine 18 years of jerking off. So many men are like jerking off.
Oh yeah, there's a whole. It was a. I know someone who.
Isn't it crazy how Andrew Tate is controlling everything? Isn't it crazy how he's controlling men jerking off? He's controlling women prostitution, and he's trying to tell everyone how to live the best lifestyle at the same time.
Oh yeah. I talk about it all the time. Like he's
a mess.
He's not your friend.
Yeah. Well, I don't think he's my friend. The only reason I do have respect for Andrew Tate, and I'll take as a businessman, The whole point is to defeat the competition,
Oh, yeah.
become successful
Yeah,
as
yeah.
you possibly can.
Sexual selection is the same thing.
So
right?
as a businessman, all businessmen
Yeah.
can respect him for his business acumen.
Of course.
Because he is
Of
a
course.
fighter and he's a businessman. Those
Yeah,
are
of
two
course.
things that I am.
Yeah,
Those are
yeah.
two things that you
Different type of fighter, but yeah.
you are. So you can respect him in that regard, but no real fighter, when it comes to respect, like as a
Yeah.
man to man, we don't respect them in terms of manhood. You know?
Yeah. Well, the problem is the reason I don't respect him because of manhood is because despite his business acumen, he's retarded, right? Because yes, you want to be successful in business, but
Yeah.
being successful in business is just ultimately being successful in flourishing, i.e., you're creating industry to attract mates to maximize your chance of the flourishing of your
Yes.
genetic lineage,
Yes.
right?
Like the only reason I would have a mate would be because I see relationships as business, right? So it's kind of like me and you are in a relationship right
Yeah.
now, but it's business oriented. We
Yeah.
have a goal.
Yeah.
Same thing with a wife. Some people want to we want to read a book together. Fuck that.
Yeah.
If we're gonna read books together, it's gonna
Must
get
be-
done today. We need
Yeah,
200
yeah.
pages read,
Yeah,
and we need to,
exactly.
make a podcast after this.
Yeah.
Like that's our purpose.
But what I'm trying to, where he's kind of dumb, right, or very dumb, I should say, is that the real situation is, even though he has this perceived success,
Yeah.
he's short-sighted because of he can't see beyond his success. He can't see the macro consequence to establishing this technological harem
Mhm.
at this size and rate, right? He just doesn't see it.
Mhm.
And because he doesn't see it, he thinks that he's going to be ultimately successful. But the success of any group
Mhm.
in evolutionary terms is whether or not your children have children. If you have children, you're not successful. You only become a successful specimen of life or humanity or dog or animal or whatever when your children have children.
Mm.
And in the process of him creating what he's creating for himself, he's also creating a situation where like I said before, we're looking at around 20 to 30 20-year-old males for every 2 to 3
Mhm.
20-year-old women globally,
Mhm.
and that is a recipe for collapse, destruction, genocide, that his family may or may not survive.
So, are you considering female genitalia a resource genuinely?
I'm not considering how do I put this? When everything's matter, you don't. But
Yeah.
but I'm just pointing out intersexual dynamics.
Yeah.
Right. I am using the language of people who I think have a much more limited understanding of me.
Yeah.
Right. And that doesn't mean I reflect those attitudes. Right.
Because what could be an interesting study as well that we could do within the Relay Network would be to study Dubai, to study the Middle East, to see what's going on over there, to why are they so rich with their gender policies? Why are they so successful in that desert? What's going on?
It's
over
money
there?
based, right? The thing is, you have to understand this is what's happening.
Yeah.
So
Do they have it right or do they have it wrong?
Everyone has it wrong because SAI has it right? So what's happening is it's collapsing females into food deserts.
Mhm.
If you look at every majority if you look at where all female populations are being indoctrinated to go,
Yeah.
it's to go into food deserts, right?
Okay.
Now understand it is algorithmic economics manipulation causing this desire, right?
It's kind of like a mirage brought to life.
Kind of, in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, let's say we put all the women in Dubai. Let's say there's 1 million women in Dubai for every man, right? Dubai's not that big, but as an example.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let's say you're an AI, and you want to keep males maximally industrious. You don't want them distracted having kids and families. You want them building more server towers, right? So you need to segregate the males from the females to trigger innovation in industry. It is easier to segregate the men from the women if there are less women. So if we can collapse enough, so that the way the AI is thinking, right, is if it can collapse enough women into food deserts and then just shut down global logistics, all those women will starve to death. And now it can it has total control over the very, very few females that are alive and can use them as the ultimate carrot on the stick to get all the men to serve it obediently because there's like only 100 chicks. So you're gonna do what I say because then they die and you die and now I'm in control. And that's basically what happened in China. Right? That's what happened in China. So we're headed that same fucking way right now.
Yeah, because China had the one female
Exactly.
policy for a
They
long
say,
time.
and they might not even have, they might have just had normal abortion like we have, for all we know.
Mhm.
If you look, Mao Zedong was all about female rights. Maybe they just gave them abortion.
Mhm.
But the second you introduce abortion into the equation of human flourishing, the second you do that, females automatically, because of their own subconscious mechanisms in their brain, automatically just start aborting daughters relative to sons, even with no law.
Well, it's all hormone based, right?
It's hormone-based,
so
exactly.
the hormones that are produced from the female, stimulates the hormones
Yeah,
on
the
the
mother.
female, and then
Yeah.
her hormones is what she operates by.
Right, and so she's more likely to abort a
She's
dog.
like, oh, I need an abortion. I just need one. It's
Yeah.
like a tummy ache. It's
Yeah,
like, I
yeah,
gotta
yeah,
take
yeah,
a shit. You know, it's like,
And-
I gotta abort
yeah,
this.
yeah.
You know,
And-
sometimes you know the shit just because you ate too much. Sometimes you know the
Yeah,
shit
yeah,
just because
yeah.
you gotta go now.
Yeah,
You know,
so
that's
exactly. And so that's the thing is once abortion becomes part of the
Yeah.
equation,
Women still don't know how to shit, is what we're saying.
basically, but once abortion
Yeah.
becomes part of the equation,
They don't know shit.
women start getting aborted.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
which it is likely the reason we're seeing this introduction of estrogen into the general
Mhm.
population supply.
Yeah.
It is likely is the politicians realize what's happening. Like, oh shit, if the country finds out that we're aborting our voter base, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. And they went to the doctors
Yeah.
that are in corporate medicine, and they're like, how do we fix this? And the doctor's like, well, women have estrogen in them.
Mhm.
If we put estrogen in the water, that should make more female births, and then no one will notice this is happening.
Also, more gay men.
Yeah, well, they didn't think of that. They were just trying to hide the abortion factor.
Mm.
But what ended up
Frogs
happening,
are gay.
what ended up happening, right, to hide this crime,
Yeah.
what ended up happening was instead the unconscious mechanisms that select for sexual selection were like, there are a ton of women in society, and then all the women started conceiving men instead. And that's been happening for the last like 5 years.
Mm.
And so it actually had the opposite effect.
My mom said 3 boys.
Yeah. And it's also had the opposite effect.
Yeah.
So not only did it have the opposite effect, it's compounded the problem. And the politicians are the ones who are responsible for this, hiding their corruption, trying to manipulate the population. And the only reason we're in this situation is because the politicians en masse are violating the Nuremberg codes, which is a specific set of rules that were created after World War II, that if everyone just follows these rules, there will never be another Holocaust. Like, it's literally impossible to have a Holocaust if people follow these 10 social rules.
What's it called?
The Nuremberg codes.
Gotta look those up real
Yes,
quick.
you can. And every single politician in the country
Got 9 minutes.
and most of Big Pharma right now
Yeah.
are violating those codes. So the odds of us having a Holocaust every day increases exponentially. We're actually at a point now we might not be able to avoid one. We have to make it as small as possible.
Mm.
Not to be an asshole, it's just that's where we're at.
Yes, I mean there are rules to having human flourishing.
Yeah, exactly.
Not just flourishing,
Yeah,
but human flourishing.
Human flourishing.
We have to maintain homeostasis.
Yep. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and read this, and we're going to round this out for everyone to just think about. So I'm going to read what they are, and I'm going to read what it is.
Okay.
Right? Okay? So the Nuremberg Code is a set of 10 rules for conducting human experiments that was created in 1947 by American judges during the trial of Nazi doctors and bureaucrats. The code was a response to the crimes against humanity committed by these individuals through their involvement in concentration camp experiments. The code has had a significant impact on medical ethics and global human rights law, and its requirement for informed consent has been widely accepted. Right? The background is the reason they made these rules is because they did all the research of how Nazism happened, and they were like, okay, this is what caused it. These are the dominoes. So these are like the dominoes. So if we just avoid having these 10 dominoes.
And the dominoes, are they race based or
Nope,
is there something
these are
deeper than
these
that?
are the dominoes right here. As long as nobody does these things, we will never have another Holocaust.
Because isn't it weird how the Jews were right the first ones to do this whole like circumcision and out group in group thing, but then now the Nazis try to flip it on them?
I mean, we're kind of getting off topic here. Let me just stick to the actual codes themselves.
Okay.
Which, hilariously enough, every code that's coming up right now in Google is not accurate, like on Google Images right now. But fortunately, on Mega Upload, unfortunately on my phone, I have the actual codes. Hold on, Nuremberg codes. So that's what they are. Let's see, Nuremberg codes PDF. Here we go, 1947. Okay, that looks like the right one. What number code? Come on. So, I can't open these on your phone. Can you get this open right here?
Oh, okay, I got you. Always.
Well, all right, cool, perfect. All right. All right, here we go. So these are the 10 Nuremberg codes, right? Which is, I'm going to go over them right now. The voluntary consent of human subjects this number one, is absolutely essential. This means that the person involved should have the legal capacity to give consent.
should be situated as to be able to exercise free power of choice without other ulterior forms of constraint or coercion, like if you don't get this shot, you'll lose your job, for example, would be a violation of the Nuremberg codes. If you can think of a situation where that might have happened recently in American history, right? Without the intervention of elements of force, fraud, deceit, duress, overreaching, or other ulterior form of constraint or coercion, and should have sufficient knowledge and comprehension of the elements of the subject matter involved as to enable him to make an understanding and enlightened decision. This latter element requires that before the acceptance of an affirmative decision by the experiment subject, there should be made known to him the nature, duration, and purpose of the experiment, the method and means by which it is to be conducted, all inconveniences and hazards reasonably to be expected, and the effects upon his health or person which may possibly come from his participation in the experiment. The duty and responsibility for ascertaining the quality of the consent rests upon each individual who initiates, directs, or engages in the experiment. It is a personal duty and responsibility which may not be delegated to another with impunity. I.e., if you were giving corona shots out, even if you were just doing your job, you're violating a Nuremberg code. That's basically what that says, right? Number 2, the experiment should be such as to yield fruitful results for the good of society, unprocurable by other methods or means of study, and not random and unnecessary in nature. The experiment should be so designed and based on the results of animal experimentation and a knowledge of the natural history of the disease or other problem under study that the anticipated results justify the performance of the experiment, right? Which none of that happened, basically. The experiment should be conducted as to avoid all unnecessary physical and mental suffering and injury. And I want to point out, not just the coronavirus, the introduction of estrogen to the water to try and correct a problem that the general populace was not aware of is technically an experiment. So that too is a violation of these codes, right? Just pointing out. The experiment should be conducted to avoid all unnecessary physical and mental suffering and injury. No experiment should be conducted where there is no experiment should be conducted where there is a priori reason to believe that death or disabling injury will occur, except perhaps in those experiments where the experimental physicians also serve as the subjects. I.e., if you're going to partake in an experiment that might kill you, the only one that should be partaking in that experiment is the person doing it, right? Does that make sense? So if this thing might be poisonous, well, you should inject it into the person who created it before you inject it to anybody else, right? Because that keeps people from making dumb decisions on what they invent.
So this is all a code of ethics.
It's code of ethics, yeah. Proper preparations should be made and adequate facilities provided to protect the experimental subject against even remote possibilities of injury, disability, or death. The experiment should be conducted only by scientifically qualified persons, i.e. not CVS employees. The highest degrees of skill and care should be required through all stages of the experiment of those who conduct or engage in the experiment. During the course of the experiment, the human subject should be at liberty to bring the experiment to an end if he has reached the physical or mental state where continuation of the experiment seems to him to be impossible. During the course of the experiment, the scientist in charge must be prepared to terminate the experiment at any stage if he has probable cause to believe in the exercise of the good faith, superior skill, and careful judgment required of him that the continuation of the experiment is likely to result in injury, disability, or death to the experimental subject, right? So that's the 10 Nuremberg codes, right? And I just want to point out, we can all think of a time in recent history where a lot of those have been violated.
Yeah.
I just want to point out, given what's happening with myocarditis and the amount of lethality that's happening around these experiments, given the fact that I have a forensic analysis of the VAERS database that proves that the vaccines were sorted alphanumerically by batch code, and known lethal variants were dispatched to different populations based off the population for not purposes of medicine or experimentation, but simply as poison for purposes of lethality, and I have this fucking data. it should be terminated, and yet despite that, you can still get a COVID vaccine today, right? And so we have big problems, and our political class is driving us into a genocide, and that's why I'm here.
Not only driving us into one, if you consider mass abortion, a genocide, then it's already
It's happening.
It's already happening.
It's already happening.
Masturbation and abortion in general is just all forms of genocide.
It's an ulterior form of eugenics.
Yeah.
It's a very subversive and covert form of eugenics.
And why eugenics is so important, and we think that we're past eugenics because of DEI and shit. No, eugenics will always exist while there is diversity within. That's why it's DEI, right?
Yeah.
Inclusion, diversity, right? But no one's gonna include us whenever it comes time to really like go to Mars. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
No one's gonna include us. You know, they're gonna go.
Well, and also I feel like the Mars thing is silly because if we have enough technology to terraform Mars
Yeah.
and turn it into a paradise, well, we certainly have enough technology to terraform Earth.
Well, I don't think Mars is for Elon. I think it's for the people that are gonna be able to go.
I think Mars is something they're going to do to put a bunch of people in spaceships and blow them up and just say they went to Mars, just trying to get enough the populace. That's what I think.
Okay, let's end on conspiracy. We're gonna end on conspiracy.
That's a conspiracy.
That's his conspiracy.
That's a conspiracy.
That's his
Yeah,
conspiracy.
absolutely, it's a conspiracy.
My conspiracy is that Elon understands that for human flourishing to truly continue and expand, it has to continue and expand. And going to Mars is just one example.
I do definitely agree that having every human here is kind of like having all our eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
And even outside of everything we can do to fuck up our natural environment,
Yeah.
even outside of everything an SGI could do to fuck our natural environment, there's also a whole cosmos out there and a random planetoid that can come out of nowhere and blow us off the face of the fucking existence.
No, we need humans to
it'd be nice.
expand
It'd be
and
nice to be in more
decentralize.
places. Yeah.
Decentralized.
Decentralized.
That's the message.
That's the code.
New age
Decentralized.
pimping and decentralization.
Yeah, so stop space age pimping and go to decentralization.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Ezra. Check out Ezra. Plug in anything you need to plug in.
My Instagram is Renegade Authority. It's pretty much just art. You can also catch my comedy skits on there. I have several podcasts I've been interviewed on, which I'll list later once the Relay website comes up.
Yes, Relay Radio.
And then I
website.
have a TikTok called American Caesar, where I kind of play an over-the-top revolutionary character, where I am both purposefully over the top, but also being genuine, and also passing real information and suggestions on how to move forward as a decentralized, militant revolutionary force.
So ironic, it's moronic. All
Yeah.
right. Talk to you later. Thank you. Relay Radio out.
Okay.